All right. Hello. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Talking Investing. You're here with Tom and George.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, George. We got a lot to go through today. This was a big week. Some huge news. I think maybe some first signs of some game-changing news. I think we've turned the corner, but we'll dive into it. We're going to talk all things Bitcoin, all things Bitcoin miners. We're going to talk about what the market's doing. We got some inflation data today. We're going to talk about what's going on with the Fed. So we got a full docket today. So if you could smash the like button, and I believe my like button is broken, so I can't hit my button. But if you could help us out and smash the like button, we would appreciate it. It helps the stream. We are going for 100 likes, and we are at 13. We got to get the word out. We're being suppressed.
Just so you know, that's Tom's mic and not mine.
What's it do? What's my mic doing?
I don't know. It just done.
This is my brand new microphone.
Oh, are you like it's probably so sensitive that you're doing something else. If you touch it or move it or anything like that, it makes like sound.
I wonder if it's picking up on my earpiece.
Yeah. Oh, I bet you that's what it is.
All right. Well, I will try to be more careful. Let me know if that's bugging you guys. George, let me know if that persists.
I guarantee if it's bugging me, it's bugging other people.
Are you still hearing it?
No. I don't hear it now.
It got better. Good.
Yeah.
Well, hello to everybody in the chat. Hello to some members. I actually see some new names I don't recognize and some names that we've seen here for a long time. Thank you, HK. Push the button. Yeah, smash the like button. Let's get this thing going. Let's get people here talking because, wow, I think this was a really good week. I'll start out by just going big picture. The stock market's at an all-time high today. So
crazy. Isn't that crazy?
It's if you would have asked 100 people 2 months ago, I'm going to go so far as to say, well, there's one in every bunch, but I would say 1 or 2% of them would have said that's even possible. And
well, I think everybody's still speaking doom and gloom.
Right. They're speaking doom and gloom as the Nasdaq's at a new all-time high, the S&P 500's at a new all-time high. I mean, Bitcoin's at 107,000. The Bitcoin miners are on a vicious tear, and I'm just telling you, that's why I'm asking you to hit the like button. People got to get here and understand, like, they're missing it. It's on. It's happening. So, and we'll show you. I've got the charts of what Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners have done this week, this month to date, this year to date, and you're going to see there's been a massive, massive shift. So for those of you who have been sticking with this for a long time and have been waiting, it's on, and it's not like you're too late. I think I'm gonna buy some more. I'm thinking about selling one of my stocks, so I'll get to that later. Not because it's a bad company, but because the run I've had in it is just stupid. So I'm thinking about switching into maybe some positions that haven't had their run yet. So we'll see about that. I don't make a lot of trades, so I'm pretty cautious before I do that. I wanted to take the weekend to think about it, so I didn't pull the trigger on that yet. And, if it's too late Monday, then we'll see what happens. But some of these stocks have taken a big, big run up. We're going to talk about some big news on Core Scientific, some price targets on Core Scientific that I think are absolutely insane. But if they're true, then it's a screaming buy. It's the best buy in the whole group right now if what some of the reports I'm reading are true. And they're from, big institutions giving them this valuation. And so we'll talk about Core Scientific, but essentially CoreWeave, and we don't know any specifics, but CoreWeave, once again, they tried this a year ago. They want to buy Core Scientific. So that stock went through the roof this week, but it's not the only one. The other high performance computing plays, a couple other ones kind of rode the coattails of that and had big run ups. So this was a really good week for most of the Bitcoin miners.
I was going to get in heavy at 7 cents, but somebody talked me out of it. I won't tell you who that person was.
And when you hear the number for what they're talking about, I don't believe them, by the way. There's another analyst out there that I think is a little bit more on course with what the offer is going to be. And there's no telling whether this is a done deal, because they tried to buy Core Scientific a year ago for $1 billion, and Core Scientific said, no, thank you. Well, let's just suffice it to say it's going to be an awful lot more than $1 billion. It's going to be somewhere between $5 billion and $10 billion.
Insane.
Possibly more. So we'll see what happens. Let's just go to that right now, because I will tell you, it's just staggering. First of all, here's the Bitcoin chart that we're looking at. This yellow line right here is where Bitcoin closed yesterday. So you can see we barely moved. We were down less than 0.5% today. It was a pretty even day. On the Bitcoin miners, Bitfarms tanked at the end of the day. Maybe Riot got rid of some more shares. Hut had a bad day. TeraWulf had a bad day. But when you look at their week altogether, most of these still did very well during the week. Not Bitfarms. Bitfarms is an extended period of downward momentum, and it's not going to be done, in my opinion, until Riot gets rid of the rest of their shares. And we'll go through and take a look at how many they have left, not including whatever they may have dumped today, because this did take a big turn to the downside late in the day. But IREN continued to run, up almost 7% today on a day that Bitcoin was actually down, a little bit less than 0.5%. So strong movement this week from the Bitcoin miners. I'll go to... This was yesterday's big board. So I took a picture of this because several things happened yesterday, and I think they're noteworthy. So the first thing is, you can see Core Scientific was up 33% yesterday. And that was right. That was on the news of the potential buyout. And when you see the article I'm going to show you, this is missing the mark by like 100% if that analyst is correct. But 33% was a giant move to the upside. IREN was up another 10% yesterday. It just keeps having good day after good day. I talked about the fact that Riot, which yesterday was at $10.51, Cleanspark, which was at $10.81, and IREN, which was at $13.11. And we'll look today, the discrepancy is even bigger. All three of those were within 1 penny of each other. I think it was last Friday. They all crossed over the $9 market, throughout the day, within pennies of each other. And since then, IREN has just skyrocketed. Right? If we go back and look, they closed at $14. So we'll look at their chart. I mean, they were $6 a couple months ago, and they're 14 now. It's crazy. So we had that part of the puzzle, and that dragged a lot of these up. Riot got, because Riot is made their presence known that they're interested in high performance computing, I think they got a bounce. They were up 5% yesterday. Again, Bitcoin was down yesterday. So this giant green board was on a day Bitcoin was down 0.22%. So you'll see CIFR up 8.8% yesterday. TeraWulf up 15%. No news on any of these other companies. They're just riding the coattails of that Core Scientific news. On the flip side, BitDigital was down 15%, and it's for two reasons. The first reason is they did they raised, I think, $150 million at $2 a share. So you can see they went down 15% to $1.99 a share. So they just pegged themselves. They just did a public offering at $2 a share yesterday. So the stock gravitated to that, which was a 15% move to the downside. So, but there is more news on BitDigital that we'll get to. and they're actually going to come off of this board altogether. We have our final confirmation of that.
I threw a poll up real quick. Who expects a big July for Bitcoin? And I kind of dialed it in really tight on the numbers because we got to. We know where it's going. A lot of people saying 115 to 120, Tom.
You're right. I know. I've got.
That's what I'm expecting.
The only reason not to expect it is because so many people are expecting it. So as you know, they like to mess with us, but that's not scaring me away. I think the next move is up. We're going to talk about a bull flag. I don't love talking about technical patterns because to some extent they're nonsense. But
Edmund's right. 3 more days for strategy. And if they're going to have an unbelievable quarter.
Yeah, because they have been, for the first time in 2 years, the last couple of months, they've actually been lagging behind the Bitcoin miners. Now, most of that is because MicroStrategy's done significantly better than every single Bitcoin miner over the last 18 months. So some of that is just some natural catching up. But yeah, qualifying to get into the S&P 500 and getting themselves into the S&P 500 is a gigantic deal. So
that's going to be amazing.
And
macro, where do you think it's going? Bitcoin.
And at Ethan is asking what happened to Bitfarms today. And until further notice, I think, and let's go take a look at the actual. Until further notice, these dips in Bitfarms are because Riot has announced their intention to get rid of their 90 million shares of Bitfarms. Now, they put out, I think I've got this up here somewhere. Okay, so you'll see this Form 13D. This is now 10 days old. They're down to 74 million shares as of a week and a half ago. They were at almost 91 million. They're down to 74. I suspect that on a day like today, they did some selling. But what I want to look at is.
Oh, nice. 127.
See, this was still very low volume. This is where Bitfarms is struggling. And this is where Riot is struggling to get rid of their Bitfarms. Bitfarms volume keeps getting lower and lower and lower. And there's no buyers out there. And the main reason there's no buyers out there is they all know there's 90 million shares that got to get sold, now 74 million. So even let's say it's down to 65 million now. If they're doing only 8 million or 10 million a day, you know, how much of that can be Riot because it gets its volume from the rest of the whole world? So, I mean, this could take months. This could drag out for months. And I have considered, and last week I decided not to do it, but this week I'm going to spend the weekend trying to put together a trade potentially to get rid of my Bitfarms and with the intent to buy it back in 90 or 100 days because I just don't see this trend stopping. I mean, I think it will, even if it... Go ahead, George.
Going below 50 cents, Tom.
I mean, I can't.
There's just no demand for it.
There's zero demand and there's a massive supply with Riot out there looking to liquidate. So, you know, it's unfortunate. This hostile takeover attempt by Riot, it destroyed Bitfarms. It just destroyed them. And I get it. They helped, right? It didn't just happen to them in a vacuum. They did a bunch of.
I mean, they're going to have to become a United States company, and Trump just went ballistic on Canada, just like right before the stream started, with tariffs because I don't know, some digital tax was being put on them, and you know, one of the big boys got all mad and called Trump.
Yeah, the news today was, you know, escalating trade wars with Canada, which is not a good thing.
No, not at all.
So let's hope, you know.
No, but I think that Bitfarms might be in the cross pairs. You know?
All they have to do is just say they moved.
Right.
And I understand it's not quite that simple, but I mean, essentially it's that simple. And
no, all they had to do is say sold.
They should, yeah, Pogo's saying they should have sold to Riot.
Yeah.
That was at, I think, $2.31 or something like that. And I felt at that time that offer was ridiculous.
Well, what is
only
it
to
now,
find out that we're at 74 cents right now. So it wasn't that ridiculous.
No.
I am glad they didn't take it because I don't think anybody was going to win in that. Well, I'm not glad because Bitfarms, at one point a year and a half ago, Bitfarms was my biggest position. It's down over 80% from where it was a year and a half ago. So all the rest of my Bitcoin mining positions have now passed Bitfarms. It went from first place to last place in my portfolio. So that's how Bitfarms has been doing for me. And I hate to bail out at the bottom, but if there's an opportunity to get into something else that's going to perform better for the next 60, 90, 120 days, I mean, if I can get out of this at 74 cents instead of 50 cents, you know, and I started talking about this at 95 cents. So already, you know, we've had a big drop since then. But I do have a potential trade in mind. We're at 52 likes already. Thank you, everybody. If you could smash the like button, it helps the stream out big time in real time. And I want to get to some of these top stories, and I want to start right out. Let's talk about what's going on with Core Scientific, because this one's a doozy. Which one am I going to go to first here? Okay, Core Scientific soars on report of new CoreWeave buyout attempt. Shares of Core Scientific continued to rally Friday on the reports that AI hyperscaler CoreWeave is in talks to acquire the Bitcoin miner. Core Scientific stock vaulted 33% Thursday. We just looked at that. Wall Street Journal is reporting. CoreWeave, which is now a publicly traded company, and they have a gigantic, long-term contract with Core Scientific. It's the vast majority of Core Scientific's business. So I understand what's going on here. The interesting question that I would put to everybody is, what's going to happen to the 18 exahash of Bitcoin mining that really is pretty much a lost cause for Core Scientific at this point? They didn't update their fleet at all. They just keep retiring machines slowly over time as they become non-profitable. So are they just, if CoreWeave buys them, they could pull the plug on that and say, you know what, we want to take that potential, those megawatts and put them towards what we do. Now they'd have to change some infrastructure around and that kind of stuff, but I don't see what's left of Core Scientific's Bitcoin mining business. So I think if they do get bought by CoreWeave, they will get out of the Bitcoin mining game altogether. That's just my opinion. It makes no sense for CoreWeave to waste those megawatts, other than it's an investment, and other than, can they buy it for the right price? Because again, they made an offer on this. So here, CoreWeave attempted to purchase Core Scientific last year for $5.75 a share, which valued the company at around $1 billion. So right now, if we go to CoreWeave or Core Scientific, if you take a look, they're about a $5 billion company right now after the run-up they just had. So that's at, around $16 or $17. And that's where a lot of analysts are looking at this potentially landing. However, quickly put my hands on this. A lot of news. I got a lot of windows open.
I'm going to look at the 10K challenge.
Look at the this was a runaway, but the poll is now pretty close. So if you haven't voted, vote in the poll. But it seems like everybody's pretty optimistic. Possible I don't have this open. All right. In any regard, I'll just tell you, since I can't find the article at the moment, there's one of the big investment houses feels like this is going to sell for at least $30 a share. That's where the offer is going to come in. Potentially $38 a share. Now that sounds like madness to me, because at $30 a share, you're just under $10 billion. That's 10 times what they offered them just 1 year ago. And it's all right. We know it's going to be at least 5 times what they offered them. There's no chance Core Scientific selling for less than $5 billion. They're at that right now. So, somewhere between 5 and 10, or if they get to $38 a share, that would be, $12+ billion. And that would make them bigger than, by far bigger than all the other Bitcoin mining companies. And again, I think they would not even be a Bitcoin mining company anymore. They would just be a high performance computing company at that point. And I think that's where this $5 billion is coming from, because it's certainly not coming from their Bitcoin. They do have 18 exahash fleet. However, they've stopped reporting. They haven't bought new machines in years and years and years. So that fleet is aging rapidly. And I think it's just going to dwindle its way down to zero, either naturally, or they'll just, if they were smart, they'll shut it off right now and sell them while those machines are still worth something to somebody at a discounted price and just get out of there. That's all contingent on whether or not Core Scientific says yes. Now, that's their biggest customer, and most of these contracts have multiple, options. So I think CoreWeave's Core Scientific also has to look at the other side and say, if we keep rejecting these offers, especially, if they increase their offer by 500 or 700%, and Core Scientific still says no, they risk maybe losing some of these deals, because these deals are not, although they're long-term deals, they have multiple options that make them long-term deals. So I think the other piece of this puzzle is this did not just affect Core Scientific. And if we go back and look at yesterday's action, because that's when this happened, TeraWulf on no news. TeraWulf doesn't even report their Bitcoin operations anymore. So on no news, they were up 15%. Why? Because they're all in on high performance computing. CIFR, 8.8%, same thing. IREN, 10%. Remember, IREN several months ago said they will get to 50 exahash by the end of June, which is 3 days from now. So let's see what their monthly operational report shows. And then they're taking an indefinite pause in growing their Bitcoin mining. Now, that makes them a top 3 Bitcoin miner, and there really isn't anybody else for the next 12 months that can catch up to the top 3. Beyond that, there are several that could take a run at them, 18 months from now and so on. So they basically said, starting several months ago, they sell all their Bitcoin. They have no HODL position, and their cost per coin is very low. This company was profitable in the quarter where Bitcoin was hanging out at around 80,000. So, this quarter that's going to close, Bitcoin's been on the average over 100,000. So they're going to be extremely profitable. And all the cash flow they are putting in their high performance computing. So in addition to that, they just borrowed $550 million to grow out their high performance computing infrastructure. So they are a company that's all in on high performance computing, and they were up 10% on that. And when you see what they're up this week, this month, this year, you're going to see they are doing very well. So the two companies to me that are really have done what they said they're going to do more so than the rest of this field. And I'm not saying they're the only two good companies. I think I have 6 Bitcoin mining stocks I own. CleanSpark and IREN. CleanSpark, we'll switch gears for a second because they put this press release out a few days ago. CleanSpark reaches 50 exahash milestone. They're calling that escape velocity. So they feel like they've reached a point where they're locked in as one of the top Bitcoin miners, and this does put them in. And to be fair, they've been in second place. They mine the second most Bitcoin every single month for the last year and a half. Now, IREN's gotten very close to them, and IREN's looking to announce in a few days that they're at 50 exahash potentially. So they may get close for a couple of months. The difference is IREN has said, we're going to take a timeout from increasing our Bitcoin operation. We think 50 exahash is big enough. That already makes them a monster. However, if you look at this press release, CleanSpark has said, as we look to the future, CleanSpark has laid the foundation to achieve 60 exahash and beyond. This expansion capacity aligns with the company's broader strategy to grow with capital efficiency only possible for an operator that has achieved escape velocity. So one of the things they're alluding to is this company, which had a year worth of stock dilution that was unbelievable, but by the same token, they grew themselves to 50 exahash. So it's now the end of June. We're just a few days away from 6 months into this year. CleanSpark has not issued any new shares of stock to raise equity for the last 7.5 months. So, and they have no plans to do so, I think, for the rest of the year. So they could very well go, after a couple of years of all of these companies having to use a lot of money to get where they're going, they've stopped diluting completely. So, obviously that adds value as they become a bigger and bigger. They're a much bigger company. They're the second largest. They're going to continue to be the second largest for the rest of this year. Obviously, IREN may catch up to them for 1 month, but CleanSpark, you can see right here, plans to keep on going to 60 exahash and beyond. So, and Marathon is the largest, but unlike Marathon, CleanSpark's cost per coin is significantly less than Marathon's. Marathon is still a cash flow positive company. All of the companies we're looking at are cash flow positive on Bitcoin at the current price. So, but then some are more profitable than others. CleanSpark is better than average. They have a lower than average cost, and IREN has one of the lowest average costs per Bitcoin. And it's due to their fleet efficiencies. If we look, go to a chart here. So if you look at fleet efficiency, there's 5 companies no longer reporting. BitDR never reported their fleet efficiency. I think they ultimately will start reporting that next year. Hive hasn't reported. Core Scientific doesn't report anymore. Bitfarms doesn't report anymore. TeraWolf doesn't report anymore. So this is what you have left. But you can see there's a bunch of companies here. You got Marathon at 20 joules per terahash on their fleet, and their fleet's enormous. We'll look at how big it is. Hive is at 20 joules per terahash. Riot is at 21.2 joules per terahash. So, these are all very close. CIFR is a little better at 18.9. And then you kind of got 2 standouts. CleanSpark at 16.7 and IREN at 15. So this efficiency is one piece of the equation because you also have to have access to cheap energy in addition to being efficient with it. So, these two companies seem to really have gotten this program down better than the rest of the field. So to me, those are my two standout companies that I have the highest level of conviction in. But I do think there's a lot of other Bitcoin miners that are going to participate in a very big run up in the rest of 2025. That's my opinion. Let's just take a quick look. So Bitcoin is kind of hanging out still, very close to where we were at the market close today. We're at 65 likes. If you guys could do us a favor and smash the like button, it does help the stream out in real time. And let's see. Who expects a big July for Bitcoin? So let's call this poll. In first place, and this switched, 120,000. So your choices were 95,000, 100,000, 115,000, and 120,000. So the two most bullish options on here came in first and second. 115,000 at 45%, 120,000 at 40%. So 85% of you think we're getting to at least 115,000 in July. That's not hard to believe. We're at around 107 right now. We were as high as 112 at one point recently. So I think that those are very realistic expectations. And so, and who knows? Who knows when this thing takes off? We're going to talk about adoption because we continue to have massive Bitcoin adoption. There was several more announcements this week. Every single live stream, we have multiple announcements of companies that are either beginning a Bitcoin treasury or adding to their Bitcoin treasury. We've got, this time we have a state that put some big news out. So there's a lot. There's a lot going on. I want to go to 3 different articles real quick and talk about why I think things are looking good for the Bitcoin miners in specific. And then after that, I want to go take a look at what the Bitcoin miners did this week and what they did in the month of June and what they've done year to date, because things are getting interesting. But there's 3 articles that have come out over the last few weeks. This one, U.S. listed Bitcoin miners' share of the network hash rate hit a record high in June. This from JP Morgan. So the 13 companies they follow year over year increased their exahash by 99%. The overall network increased by 55%. So that's almost double the rate. So the publicly traded Bitcoin mining companies that many of you are investing in, that I am invested in, are rapidly outpacing the growth of the network. So that bodes well for them. That lowers their cost per coin. That gets them more coins. So so you can see the miners now account for 31.5% of the global network. That's the highest number ever since they've been calculating this. And it's gone up dramatically even in the last 5-6 months. This was down around 26%. So, adding 5% is a big deal. So that's one. Take me a second to find these.
I'm getting ready to put up another poll time. I'm trying to think what to put it up.
Yeah, it's poll time. Okay.
Sorry. I didn't realize it's 4th of July weekend, basically.
Oh, yeah, kind of.
Yeah, for somebody. So I'm getting the jet skis ready.
Pardon the delay. I'm just finding this.
The 10K challenge was just under $4,000.
So still,
and we had Bitfarms, and I sold it. I don't care.
Good.
We're gonna go to freaking the ground.
Would you buy something in its place?
No. I got $600. I don't know what to do with it. It's burning a hole in my pocket.
All right. Well, we got to put that money to work. Okay. So in addition to the growing as a part of the overall network, here's number 2. Bitcoin mining profitability increased by almost 20% in May. This from Jefferies. The rise in profitability was driven by a 20% increase in the Bitcoin price, right? Bitcoin jumped up over 100,000. Now, it's bouncing off of 100,000 as support now and running from there. So, the average price of Bitcoin in May was much higher than it was in April, and it's, in a similar place in June. And I think we're going to have the next leg up. So you start putting the pieces of the puzzle together here. And this is the third one. And there's a fourth. Bitcoin set for the biggest mining difficulty drop since July 2021. And this one almost shouldn't count. This was when China banned Bitcoin mining. So the Bitcoin network had never had a gigantic decrease in its difficulty level. And then, when China shut a significant portion of the exahash down completely, there was a big, big drop. That's the only thing that's bigger than what we're on pace for. So this article's a few days old. We were looking at maybe a 9% drop. We haven't, and I said on the live stream on Tuesday, it will likely be less than that, but I think it will be a big number. So we're getting closer, and I'm going to go show you guys where we're at right now. I got to refresh. So this is where we were. Now, if I refresh, we're at about 8%. So that will still be the biggest drop in 4 years. And now you can see we're almost at the end of this block cycle, right? We're at block, we're at block 903,000, 902, 980, and we got to get to 903, 168. So we are just about to have a change in the difficulty level. If this holds up, then that will mean through June 30th, through half of the year, the Bitcoin network will only have gone up about 6%. We've had years where that number was over 100%, 50%, 100%. So this is helping the Bitcoin miners quite a bit as the publicly traded Bitcoin miners become a bigger percentage, and the difficulty level, as they grow and the difficulty level doesn't grow, they're mining more and more Bitcoin, right? Last month, Marathon mined 950 Bitcoin. Cleanspark just under 700 Bitcoin, right? So I think you're going to see June numbers might be a little rough because there was a difficulty increase in June. But I think July numbers have the potential to be off the charts. And the other thing that's going to happen is for the quarter ended June 30th, you're going to see some absolutely spectacular financial statements. So with the Bitcoin miners, one, because some of them are already profitable. All right. Two, because they're going to get the companies that are hodling Bitcoin are going to get a huge markup, because Bitcoin is way, way up from where it was at March 31st. So this will be where it's at June 30th. And if we just to revisit who are the HODLers, you can see Marathon's got almost 50,000 Bitcoin. So the adjustment that they're going to get, I want to get to Sour Melon Gaming. Thank you for the super chat. Sell Bitfarms, Tom, and don't re-enter. Reverse split incoming. I know Sour Melon Gaming is a believer there will be a reverse split. I once again will defend. Bitcoin's been through Bitfarms has been through this. They got down to 37 cents and they clawed their way back up over $1 without having to do a reverse stock split. I think they're getting beaten down for reasons that make sense to me, but when those reasons are over, the selling pressure will be over, and I think they will recover. There's a very strong balance sheet behind this, and there is a business model here. It's not the business model I signed up for. I will absolutely say that. So I've changed my investment thesis as they have changed what kind of company they are, right? They were going to be 35 exahash by the end of this year. Well, now they're at around 20 and they're done. And they're focusing on high performance computing. And my fear being there's so many of just their own competitors right inside of the Bitcoin mining world that are so far ahead of them on that curve that, you know, I just don't think they're likely to be the first ones to pop off a big contract. I think you're going to see several others before them, but who knows? You never know. So Riot owns almost 20,000 Bitcoin, and CleanSpark owns 12,502 Bitcoin. This was as of May 31st. We'll see what they did with their Bitcoin in June. Now, in May, CleanSpark held on to, they hodled 401 of their Bitcoin. Marathon hodled 942 of the 950 they mined. CleanSpark hodled 401 of the 694 that they mined. So you see, they're holding a majority of their Bitcoin. So they're likely to push 13,000 Bitcoin when we get a report next week from them. And then the last company, then you see it drops off a cliff down into the around 1,000, between 1,000 and 1,500. Now, it's worth noting, HOT, when last reporting, and they haven't reported since March, they had 10,264 Bitcoin. They've been holding that for 5 or 6 or 7 years. So I have no reason to believe they've sold it, but I don't know because they're not reporting anymore. So we're going to have to wait for the quarterly update to see where they're at. Hive, for some reason, which is doing a quarterly report, they just left out their Bitcoin hodl out of this month's quarterly report, and that disturbs me a little bit. It makes me feel like, maybe it went down. And then Bitfarms they just did their last report in April, and they had around 1,000 Bitcoin. So we don't know. So these companies we don't know. These companies we do know. They're telling us monthly. There's 3 companies that have huge Bitcoin stacks. Their financial statements are going to be out of this world. I would add to that list IREN at 50 exahash and 15 joules a terahash with the price of energy that they pay. They're going to have they're going to have their best quarter in the history of their company by far with their June 30th financial statements. So I think there's some good news ahead. Now, have the stocks run out ahead of it? That's a different question. So let's look.
What was I going to say, Tom? No, big news about crypto this week with Freddie and Fannie. Did you see that?
No.
Freddie and Fannie now can use crypto as an asset when applying for a mortgage.
Really?
Yep.
So that's more adoption, really. It's more of it's a fundamental change on how traditional financial institutions are viewing cryptocurrency. There's almost no voice left out there saying, this stuff isn't real. They're still saying it's volatile, right? But we're seeing everybody jump into this. JP Morgan, the Bitcoin hating company, they're the founder of the financial institutions that hate Bitcoin, right? Jamie Dimon's on record as saying Bitcoin's like the pet rock. And the last thing he said is, I don't ever want to talk about Bitcoin ever again. So having said that, they just set up JPMD, JP Morgan Digital, and they're expanding hugely into cryptocurrency. They just did put that out last week. So, that's the biggest financial institution we have here in the United States. And they're opening a cryptocurrency world. I'm not sure if they're going to have their own stable coin. The stable coins are exploding. It's just to me, everywhere I look, it's just all good news. I can't find the bad news.
I can. Riot selling the shares of Bitfarms.
Yeah, Bitfarms specific. I know that is moving in the wrong direction fast. So it's just not going well. And Somermelon Gaming saying it's like the DigiHost situation. Sometimes you just gotta sell the loser and move on it. And I'm coming around to that position.
It just hurts.
I'm just gonna tell you guys, if this thing does plummet to like 50 cents, I will get back in. And I'm not a swing trader, but this is not a swing trade. I've been holding this for years and years. I'm very disappointed in my Bitfarms investment, right? At one point, I was up, over 200% on my Bitfarms investment, and now I'm down massively. It's my worst position. So, shame on me. I got caught holding on and believing, and things just kept getting worse and worse. And now we know they've got a catalyst that is not done. There's somewhere between 60 and 74 million shares out there that Riot still holds that they will be selling imminently. So the sell pressure is on. That stock's likely to underperform all of its peers until further notice, unfortunately. So let's.
Dude. Hey, you got any polls for me, Tom?
Well, let me get to an article. I like to do an article.
I got one.
Oh, if you got one, then I'll do the next one. All right, random timeout for a Ripple related news.
Woohoo!
New York judge slaps down the SEC and Ripple's second request for an indicative ruling on proposed $50 million settlement. Now, this is getting ridiculous. The SEC and Ripple have agreed on what they want to do, and the courts aren't letting them do it. And I will tell you, this is so we have a new administration. We have a new head of the SEC, more importantly, right? Because Gary Gensler was suing everything he could figure out to sue as it pertained to cryptocurrency, particularly all of the exchanges. And it really started with this Ripple lawsuit, which he did which was for $2 billion. They settled on like $200 million. And then they agreed, you know what? We dropped all the other cases they dropped. And so they said, it's not really fair to make Ripple pay $200 million when we just dropped all the rest of the cases. So we'll settle for $50 million. And this is the second time a judge has said, no, we're not letting you two consenting, right? A publicly traded company and the SEC have agreed on exactly what they want to do, and the judge isn't letting them do it. And unfortunately, this is probably going to have to work its way up to the Supreme Court. By the way, today was the last day of the Supreme Court session. They're now on summer break. There was some giant issues out there. I'm not sure where any of them landed. I was too busy looking at Bitcoin and Bitcoin-related things to see where they landed. But I do think this lawsuit, as ridiculous as it is, I think this is going to end up in the Supreme Court when they come back in the fall. Because you can't tell two parties that are in full agreement that they can't do something that it doesn't affect anybody else in a negative way, shape, or form.
Especially in a civil, not a criminal.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So this is crazy.
It just shows you, and it was when was that given, Tom?
This ruling just came down. This is the second time they've ruled this way.
Well, it's probably because of what the rulings were today from the Supreme Court.
Maybe. What I would like to know is there's a big, giant ruling the Supreme Court's going to make, and it's basically on whether these circuit court judges have the ability to dictate national law.
6-3 in favor of the administration.
Okay, so to me, that's justice. So, yeah. And I'm not going to sidetrack too much because we're not here to talk politics, but I do think this was an important thing for the United States to do. We do have a Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is actually the only court that was anticipated in the Constitution. Now, obviously, we have a lot of other courts. They serve their function, and is what it is. However, you can't have thousands of judges out there now you can judge shop. What was happening is if you could find one judge to agree with your opinion, then that judge could overturn the federal government and make all 50 states comply with what that one judge wanted to do. Well, that's the Supreme Court's role. If that judge wants, if a Tennessee judge wants to rule, this is what we're doing in Tennessee, okay, that's how our system works. So it sounds like I'm very much in favor that can't, it's chaos, because now all of a sudden you have, in some way, you have 1,000 presidents of the United States, because you have there's well over 1,000 district judges, all of which right now, if they don't like something, they can just say, nope, we're staying that, you can't do it. And then
it was a madhouse.
It is a madhouse. And what was happening is they were all getting to the Supreme Court. Most of them were getting overturned, but it delays, right? The people have voted. Our representatives are there. You've got to let them do what they're doing. Now, if there's something egregious, go through the process, right? And you can judge what you want in your own district. So I'm going to leave it at that, because I don't want to get too bogged down in politics. But, that's kind of how our system of government was set up to work. The Supreme Court decides these national federal issues, not any one rogue district court judge. Let's see how this poll is going. Should we do the stream on July 4th? 2/3, 1/3. Is it literally on July 4th? Is that a Friday?
Yeah, next Friday.
Well, the market's not open.
No, what do they close though on the 3rd too?
No.
Oh no, they just close on the 4th.
I don't know if they do a few half days. I don't think that's one of them. But in the US, they'll be open on the 3rd and closed on the 4th. Now, Bitcoin and cryptocurrency never closes, of course. So I don't know. We're going to have to decide. We will send out a notice whether we're going to move this to Thursday or just take our first week off in 4.5 years. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I want to go to the Hamptons. I haven't been out to the house in a long time.
Well, there you have it.
But I can do the stream from there.
Oh, that's true. So in brighter news with XRP to $3, quote, that search rises as token shows whale activity spike. So, and it's been bouncing around. It's up, it's down, it's up, it's down. So, when this article was written, it was at $2.20. It got all the way down to $2.08. Let's go see where it is right now, because I think it's recovered a little bit from there. It's at $2.11.5. So I've been dollar cost averaging into XRP in this between $2 and $2.15 range. So I'm going to continue to do that, and I'll make a purchase. I plan on making a purchase today, so hopefully it doesn't skyrocket while the stream is on, because this is just about my average rate here. So I'd like to add to that position. And Bitcoin and XRP are the only cryptocurrency that I'm invested in. And obviously I'm invested in a lot of derivative products, all the Bitcoin mining companies, of course. And we talk about a lot of other companies that are starting Bitcoin treasuries. And I want to get to that because a bunch of new companies joined the party, some of them in a big way, and some of the big players got even bigger.
We're just at 10x now, and we can take out gold.
That's not bad.
It's in the realistic possibility now.
If Michael Saylor is right, I don't have this article, but we talked about it on the Tuesday members only live stream. He basically put out his new price target is Bitcoin $21 million in 2045. So that's $1 million a year for the next 20 years, effectively. So that's what he thinks is going to happen to Bitcoin. Now that's very bullish, right? Obviously, we know Michael Saylor is probably the king of all Bitcoin bulls everywhere. And although, get to this week, 245 Bitcoin strategy, formerly Microstrategy, Michael Saylor, they only bought 245 Bitcoin this week. They've been buying, the last couple of weeks, they've been on a tear. They were buying 10,000 a week. So this happens to them at least once a month. They kind of take a week down or off, and then people think, oh, they're stopped buying. And it's like, you can't buy 10,000 every week forever. And, they're closing in on 600,000 Bitcoin. So they are the largest publicly traded company, Bitcoin treasury, and they're 10 times larger than the second largest. Now, there's some companies with big aspirations, none big enough to catch MicroStrategy, but big enough to get in the top 5 or the top 3. Right now, Marathon, you saw at almost 50,000, is the second largest holder of Bitcoin. I think there's going to be a bunch of companies within the next 18 months that have that, between 10, get themselves over 10,000, over 20,000, over 30,000. We'll see if they get to 40 or 50,000, but there's huge dollars committed to buying Bitcoin. And it's one of the reasons I think that this is going to take longer and continue to have slow, steady growth for Bitcoin versus, typically we would be getting a lot closer to the end of our normal 4-year cycle. But I'm just not sure it's going to play out that way anymore. There's too much adoption going on. This is a totally different game. There was, to put it in perspective, during all the previous Bitcoin halving cycles, I think it would be fair to say you could round down to the statement that there was no Bitcoin adoption and no cryptocurrency adoption. It was illegal to buy XRP in the United States in the last Bitcoin bull run, in the last halving. That's how far we've come. I mean, we're in a different world. But having said that, there are some other companies get there. Metaplanet. So we've been talking about Metaplanet. Metaplanet's been buying Bitcoin like crazy. Metaplanet overtakes Musk's Tesla. So Metaplanet now owns more Bitcoin than Tesla does. This says becomes the 5th largest corporate Bitcoin holder. They did not pass. I'm going to go back to the chart and show you guys. This is 12,345. So they're in a very, very close race right now with CleanSpark, which was at 12,500 on May 31st. They're likely to be somewhere between 12,800 and 13,000 when they report next time. That's just my best guess. We'll see when they report. So, you can see that Metaplanet has now put themselves in that area. They're now top 5. But there's a lot of companies that are coming up behind them. Having said that, Metaplanet has talked about spending, I think, another $5 billion on Bitcoin. They want to get to, I think, 210,000 Bitcoin is their goal. I'm just remembering that off the top of my head, so you can correct me in the chat if that's the wrong number. Let's see if it says this in here somewhere. They've got some old numbers with, well, technically it is over 570. It's over Strategy has over 590,000 Bitcoin. And they talk about Marathon, Riot, Galaxy, and Strategy, but they forgot to mention CleanSpark. So their information, whoever made this article, their information was a little out of date because CleanSpark still is ahead of Metaplanet for the moment. That will not last because Metaplanet has big plans to get to much, much, much larger numbers. Go and see if I have my chart open here. So Metaplanet has allocated $5.3 billion for future Bitcoin purchases. So obviously they're looking to go well past that. But you have several other companies, some of which I did not update this list for the ones that have joined the last few days. But you have multiple companies. Semler Scientific, $11 billion commitment. RIOT Logtech, $1.5 billion. Trump Media, $2.3 billion. GameStop, $1.75, and that has an update. So let's go to that. GameStop has another $2.7 billion in Bitcoin buying power after a $405 million green shoe exercise. So the underwriters exercised their option to buy another 450 million shares of GameStop, $2.25 billion mid-June convertible debt offering. So GameStop raised an additional $450 million, bringing the total funding from the company's mid-June convertible debt offering to $2.7 billion. Now, they said they're going to use that, the statement that everybody always puts in these SEC documents. The capital will be used for corporate purposes. They usually say general purposes, investing purposes, but they specifically say including acquiring Bitcoin as a treasury reserve asset. And that's really what they borrowed the money for. So, you know, they're going to be one of the big holders in Bitcoin. And they already own, let's see if it says in here, if they updated it. So they already own 4,710 Bitcoin. So you can see, you know, that's halfway to 10,000. They're on their way to being a top 10 and a top 5 Bitcoin holder. Here's another firm, Anthony Pompliano's ProCap. BTC buys $128 million of Bitcoin in second straight day of purchases. This is this week. This is June 25th, 2 days ago. So ProCap bought 1,208 Bitcoin, bringing its total to 4,932, with plans to scale up to $1 billion in Bitcoin. So you can see, when I say there's adoption coming, like, this is what I'm talking about. And to me, what's interesting is all these companies we're talking about, they're raising money to go buy Bitcoin. That's the level of confidence they have. They're through debt or convertible debt or equity, they're going and raising money to buy Bitcoin. How about all 500 other than Tesla of the S&P 500 that doesn't own a single Bitcoin? Not with cash that they would have to go borrow. There's companies with $50 billion, $100 billion of cash sitting on their balance sheet. It would be nothing for some of these companies to go buy $2, $3, $4, $5 billion worth of Bitcoin, would hardly even be diversifying their portfolio. So we haven't even started that game yet, and that's next. But we're seeing, you know, this list is massive. There's 40 or 50 billion dollars committed to buying Bitcoin from publicly traded companies. All of those announcements have come out over the last 6 weeks. So this just started. It's going to get a lot bigger before we're done. And this doesn't even count all the companies that have money. I want to go to what the Bitcoin miners did this week so we can take a look, because this was a good week. June by and large, was a really good month. We have one trading day left in June, so technically it's not over, but this is very close to the end. So let's take a look at what the miners did. Okay, this is this week. Core Scientific, we know they were up 33% yesterday. They were up 40% on the week. Now, that is on news of a potential buyout. IREN was up 34% this week on no news. None. That is in a week where Bitcoin was up 3%. Nice week for Bitcoin. You know, continued to creep up 3%. But you've got companies up 40%. Even if you discount Core Scientific because of the potential buyout that skews that, IREN's up 34%. CleanSpark's up 19%. TeraWolf 13, CIFR 12, Riot's up 10%, Hive 6, Hut 6, Marathon 5. So almost everything was up pretty much double what Bitcoin was up. I don't know why Marathon is lagging like this, right? Riot did double what Marathon did. Riot got a bump on this high performance computing stuff with the Core Scientific potential buyout. And then, of course, we have the two companies that have been struggling all year. BitDR was down 2% this week. Bitfarms was down 4% this week. So, you know, we do still have these two performing poorly. But, I mean, these are monster numbers, George. Up 34% in 1 week? CleanSpark.
I just wish it was Marathon.
Well, I think they'll have their turn. And to be honest, that's one of the things I'm thinking of buying when I sell my Bitfarms is Marathon.
So you said something about Core. What are the analysts thinking it's going to go to, by the way?
There's several analysts out there. The average 12-month target price for this is somewhere around $18. But there were a few analysts that were talking about, and I don't know why I don't have the article. Maybe I'll go find it. I looked at it, read it, saved it, but whatever, something happened. There's one analyst talking about potentially between $30 and $38 a share. So that would be up potentially over 100% from where they are right now. So I think there's still room to the upside left. I'm not going to participate in this because, you know, first of all, I missed the big piece of it. Second of all, if Core Scientific says no, their stock's likely to pull back from the giant gains they just got. This is week to date. I want to go to month to date because this is where I feel like we are picking up momentum, and this is the second month in a row. Bitcoin up 2% month to date. IREN 67% month to date. And I will tell you, I sold my Microstrategy on April 23rd. And I bought, the biggest piece was IREN. And then I bought a bunch of Hive, which actually hasn't really performed that well. And some Riot. But the big piece was IREN. And I'm up 128% on my IREN since I bought it. So I'm considering, I never do this, but I'm considering taking the loss on Bitfarms and offsetting the gain on IREN and getting out of both of those positions and taking my win, because this stock has run to a place, and I'll show you why I'm thinking that, because, you know, just on its own, you may say, well, listen, maybe it could still double from here, and it could. But if you go to IREN's chart, if you look at the RSI, sorry, this is the daily RSI. You can see we just spiked over the last 2 days. We are now at what? 81. So I've got a line here at 83. There's one time in history we got above that line, and it was in June of 2024. But other than that, 83 is where several times IREN has topped out on the daily RSI. Well, we're a minute from hitting that. So we're way overbought. Look at this run up. Forget from the bottom. Just look at this run up from, the 18th to the 27th. That's 9 days. That's 46% in 9 days. From the bottom, this is up 170% in the last 3 months. 170%. So am I thinking about getting rid of this? I am. Now it took out, you can see, there was a little bit of resistance here. It just blew right through it. It's not yet back to where it was in December. So that was almost 7 months ago now. So it could very well run up to $15 or $16, but I'm not going to cry if I sell it, on Monday for 14 and change, and it ends up that the top was 16. I just caught a ridiculous run in this, and I think sometimes you got to take your wins. And again, I'm rarely trying to find the day that I bought it, which was the 23rd. So you can see from here, that's up 100. I'm up 128% in, a couple of months here. So maybe time to take the win. How about just a super quick poll? What would you do? Not financial advice. So would you sell or at least take profits on your IREN after a 170% run in the last 90 days? And that's what I'll be thinking about this weekend, hoping that everything doesn't crash on Monday and I missed my window today. But if so, then I'll just hold it until it gets back there, because I don't think that IREN is done. I just think this run has been tremendous, so it's likely that there are others that haven't taken this run yet, that the money would be better suited sitting in a marathon. That if I go there, go to marathon, right? Marathon was at $30. They're hanging out at $15 right now. So they have not taken this run. They're up from the bottom. They're up 52%. IREN's up 170%. So do I want to maybe move that money, spread around a little bit to some of my other high conviction plays that haven't had this gigantic run yet? Even CleanSpark, with the great run it's had, is still, to me, I called $12 like ridiculous. Anything under 12 is a buy, in my opinion, for CleanSpark. Not financial advice, and I understand it got down to almost half of that. But this was at $18 in November. And this was at almost $25 in March of 2024. So just over a year ago, this was a $25 stock. What have they done since then? They've doubled their exahash. Their exahash is up 100%. They've increased their efficiency of their fleet by almost 50%, and their stock has crashed. So to me, the run's ahead for CleanSpark. I think there's a lot of, and oh, by the way, they have not diluted, since this right here, this peak in November. So this yellow line at just under $18, CleanSpark has done zero stock dilution since they hit that $18 mark. And yet they would have to run up almost 70% just to get back to where they were. So I think there's a lot of room left to the upside on companies like CleanSpark, on companies like Riot, right? They've had a very nice run because they also got pummeled, but they're up 70%. So they're very similar to Marathon, right? This is 70% versus IREN's 170%. So that's what I'm thinking of. You know, just doing a little reallocation into some stocks that I think are going to take a run. And I still really think the stock that hasn't made its move at all yet, this red line right here, this is Hive. This red line right here was Hive's all-time low at the bottom of the crypto winter back in 2022. So whereas other companies are up 500 or 600 or 700 or 1,000% since that time, Hive's up 30%. And what has Hive done in the last 2 months? They've doubled their exahash and they're going to double it again. So this is a company, same thing. The dramatic increase in exahash in 2025 and dramatic increase in fleet efficiency is going to come along with that. So their overhead is very, very, very low. I think this is a well-run company. I like this company. Their stock has not moved. They are stubbornly staying low. I mean, you can see they've just been trading in this very, very low range. I mean, this,
Tom,
yeah.
when we pass, if we pass the Genius bill, do
Yes.
you think how long until Trump announces that there is a strategic reserve for Bitcoin?
Well, I think that's a 2025 announcement.
Oh, well, we're in 2025 announced.
That's what I'm saying. We got half the year left. So I don't.
So you do think it will happen this year, though?
I do. I think that'll be a 2025 announcement. And I think there's going to be a multiple. They talked about a broad cryptocurrency bill maybe in September they're shooting for, in addition to the Genius bill. But this bill opens so many doors. It's incredible.
Well, it's going to be amazing because once it's passed, I think that that's going to strengthen, CleanSpark and Marathon dramatically.
Right. I agree. Those two.
I think that's what they're waiting for, by the way.
If you look
when I say they, I mean the hedge funds.
Right. If you look at Marathon, just to get back to where, this is not their all-time high. Remember, Marathon got to $83 in the last cycle. So let's not even talk about that for the moment. Just to get back to where they were in late November, they got a double. That's a 102% increase. So Marathon needs to double. Riot, not as much. Riot's needs to increase 50% to get back to where they were. But again, Riot was, I got to go way.
But isn't Marathon going to have a really good quarter too, Tom?
Yeah, because they're going to make more money this quarter than any other Bitcoin miner because they have almost 50,000 Bitcoin on their balance sheet. They're going to make $1 billion just on their Bitcoin in this quarter. So Riot back in the day peaked at $79. It then pulled back and it peaked again at $46, but we're at $10 right now. There's plenty of room to the upside, in my opinion, for Riot, Bitfarms, CleanSpark, Hive, and you guys may like some others. And for the companies like Core Scientific, which just got a bump on a potential buyout offer, companies like CIFR, TerraWolf, HOT, those companies are much, much, much more relying on getting some big contracts in their high performance data centers. So I think it's going to be company specific. Of those companies, the ones that have big announcements and get a big deal, they're going to run and have a nice year. The ones that don't, they're not reporting their Bitcoin mining anymore. Some of those companies. And so if they're not reporting their Bitcoin mining and they don't get any contracts on the high performance computing side, I'm not sure what the investment thesis is. But I do think they will get a giant pop if they announce some of these big, because these contracts can be big. And they take a while. You know, it took a year for Core Scientific to even really start recognizing revenue on their multi-billion dollar contract. That's just kicking in only now. And then I want to go to a company that is officially, as of today, coming off of the list. I'll start here. BitDigital announces pricing for public offering. So they did a public offering at $2 a share. We'll go look at BitDigital closed at $2.01, right? So, okay, that's why. They raised $150 million at $2 a share. But if we go, let me find this other article. Okay. This article came out 2 days ago when they did that. BitDigital exits Bitcoin mining to focus solely on ETH staking strategy. So they are officially out. Remember, they were only mining around 20 Bitcoin a month when they stopped reporting. So they've been unofficially out for some time now. They are now officially out. They are not a Bitcoin miner. So stock ticker BTBT, the one that a short report was written on 4 years ago that was maybe the harshest short report I've ever seen in my life. No, not maybe. It was the harshest short report I've ever seen in my life. They said all the members of management are on the run, fleeing from the law. All their machines were fake. I mean, it was vicious. So I don't think that doesn't seem like that report was 100% true, but you know, seems like there may have been some grains of truth in there somewhere, because this company was never able to get up and running. They've been publicly traded just as long as Marathon and longer than CleanSpark, just as long as Riot, and they just never got off the ground, right? For them to be in 2025 mining 20 Bitcoin a month, they just never got there. So they're gone. Would you sell or take profits on your IREN after this 170% run in 90 days? This is almost a 50-50 split. It's a difficult decision, and I will tell you, I would not even be considering this decision, even with the big run-up, if we weren't so overbought. You can see, I mean, this is we're in rare territory. You got to go all the way back. This light blue line that I have here, there's only been one time in the history of IREN that we've gone above that on the daily RSI. So that is the cap, and we're 1.5 points away from that. So we're just about to hit that cap, and you can see this is the one time, which was last year. About 1 year ago, we got to the same spot. And then every other time here in December of 2023, we got there and had a gigantic pullback. Here we got there in July of 2023, and we had, another The last times that we've gotten there, this happened, this happened. If I go like this, right? The time after before that, this happened. I mean, these were all, look at these moves to the downside. That's a 54% move to the downside. That's a 64% move to the downside. And if you go from the top of this, that's a 63% move to the downside. So this is the danger of being this far overbought on the daily RSI. And we've only ever been there, you know, a couple of times. And every single time it's been a disaster. Here, this is the other time it happened. It was right here. Right here, right? We got here. And we did this. So what was that? That was a 60% pullback. So on average, once we hit that line, IREN has had a 60% pullback pretty much 4 out of 4 times. And that's what I'm looking at. Is this the exception? It might be. There's some reasons to believe that this stock could keep running, but I mean, that is compelling evidence.
All right, welcome to Talking Investing.
Old Jock said, if you take a look at 5-year charts, they're all pretty similar, and none of the miners are anywhere near their old highs, all destroyed in the bear market. They did all get destroyed in the bear market. I'm kind of measuring this 2 ways. Versus their all-time highs, most of them are not anywhere near their all-time highs, but I am measuring, and I'll go to that chart right now. Where are they from their crypto winter lows? Because if you dollar cost averaged into these have been cyclical. If you didn't get out at the end of the last bull run, and I did not get out of Bitfarms, and that's why I'm getting crushed on it. If you didn't get out and you held it to the bottom of the crypto winter, every single Bitcoin miner, the best Bitcoin miner, pulled back 91% in the crypto winter. There were several that pulled back 99% during the crypto winter. So that, I mean, the pain was real. It was dramatic. But if we go to the flip side of that, let me get to a chart. From the bottom of the crypto winter until now, IREN's up. You can't even see it. It's off. I gotta fix the chart. It's so high. But if you can barely see, IREN's up 1,273% from its low during the crypto winter. That's a 10x. CIFR's up 1,007. Sorry, that's a 12x, almost a 13x. CIFR's up 1,000%. TeraWolf's up 689%. Core Scientific went through bankruptcy. They're up off the charts. You can't even, the number, it's 20,000% or something like that. Bitcoin's up almost 600%. Cleanspark's up 500%. So this is a dollar cost averaging world, and in the past it's really been, you got to get out when the time is right. So IREN is now 1,273% up from the bottom of the crypto winter. So then you ask yourself from that perspective, is it time to take some profits? You know? 10x's are, that's a 12x, almost a 13x. That's a big deal. And I'm going to end this poll because it is exactly at 50-50 right now, which is incredible to me. Oh, by the way, thank you, everybody. We did get to over 100 likes with ease on this stream. George, 117 likes right now. We got there with ease today, so people must be happier. So let me get back to taking a little bit of a look. So we were talking about, this is year to date. I will tell you, 3 weeks ago, everything was red. Nothing was in the green other than Bitcoin. We now have 4 companies in the green. We've got IREN up 43% compared to Bitcoin's 14% this year. We've got Core Scientific up 19%. Now we know they were up 33% yesterday. So that tells us coming into this week, they were red year to date. Even a 33% move makes them only up 19% on the year. CleanSpark's up 16% year to date. Riot just went green year to date. CIFR's down 8%. Marathon's down 10%. HUD's down 14%. To me, that's one good day or one good week. We just saw yesterday 3 stocks do better than these numbers. So they're a week away from going green if we have the right week. Now, there's 2 stocks down here at the bottom. BitDeer's down 49% and Bitfarms is down 50%. Bitfarms, I don't have any confidence in right now at all. Just not the company, the stock. So that could get worse before it gets better. BitDeer's doing a lot of things right. I do think there's potentially some buying opportunity in BitDeer, and I haven't bought any yet. So, not financial advice, but I think there's some buying opportunity in BitDeer, down 49%, and I think there's a massive amount of buying opportunity in Hive, down 37% year to date. But again, if I go from the bottom of the crypto winner, Hive's only up 32% from the bottom of the crypto winner. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. Most of these companies, right? Bitfarms, a nightmare disaster. It's up almost 100% off of the bottom. And it's a disaster. Riot, 225, 300. Most of these companies are up at least 10 times as much as Hive is up. Some of these companies are up 20 or 30 or 40 times as much as Hive is up from the bottom. So when I look at this chart, and that's why I try and look at so many different things, and I don't make my decision based on any one thing. But when I look at this, it just tells me it doesn't make sense. Hive is very, I think, very low versus where it should be right now. And then if we go to Hive's chart, you'll see, unlike we just saw IREN, which was at 81 on the daily RSI. We've got, Hive here at around 47. So it's not even at neutral yet. On the daily MACD, you'll see it's just getting ready to do a bullish crossover. So there's room. This has been stagnant. There is room for a big push in this at some point. Now, it may come or it may not, but it's what makes sense to me. We'll just quickly take a look. So we're hanging around at around 107,000. It's been pretty steady since the market closed. And we haven't had massive moves on the weekend. So I don't want to jinx it, but the weekends have been pretty quiet. One of the members is telling me to chill. Tom, chill. As long as you don't lose, you're okay. Am I getting worked up, George?
Tom, you've been getting worked up lately. I think Bitfarm really let you down. But I was just laughing at this poll, IREN 50-50.
50-50. I can't. What would you do?
Stop loss it.
Brilliant.
It wasn't me. Somebody said it. Trust me, it wasn't me. I'm not that smart. I forgot who it was. Somebody did. They stop loss it, and that's like, yeah, that's the way to get out of it.
I think it's probably time. That's a great. It's such a simple idea that I just totally. Sometimes I could go, binary, buy, sell. That's a great option, because if this does run, because as people have pointed out, they're about to put out a monthly operational report. If they did what they said they did, they're going to announce a jump from 41 exahash to 50 exahash. I mean, that's one of the biggest monthly jumps of any Bitcoin miner in the history of all Bitcoin miners. So this monthly operational report, now, I think the market's kind of counting on them doing that, because you see they've run up way past what anybody else has done. So it becomes one of those things. Is it partially priced in? Is it completely priced in? Is it actually overbought and it's going to dump? But a stop loss is a great solution to that. So thank you to whoever put that comment up there. Sometimes the simplest answer is the right answer. So well done.
Done.
Well done. I want to see what I've skipped here because I'll just go through this quickly. Okay, so Europeans' time is now for stablecoins. First of all, stablecoins. The amount of articles about stablecoins is through the roof. Circle just went public. It's the most successful IPO in years. And the previous one was also in the cryptocurrency world as well. The previous several. So, those are some good signs. But I want to kind of point out the bogusness in this statement. Europe's time is now for stablecoins. Euro-based stablecoins to threaten the USD counterpart by 2028. So I want to put this in perspective. They said the rapidly growing EUR coin that muscle up the hardest. So if I click, this clicks through to an article, and it's this article. Market cap of Euro stablecoin surges to $500 million. USDC is $61 billion. That's 120 times the size. By the way, Tether is 250% bigger than that at $157 billion. So you've got over $200 billion of stable coins pegged to the US dollar and 500 million pegged to the euro. So I think let's not get too carried away with the euro becoming the world's currency and cryptocurrencies stable coin, because right now it's the biggest one they have is basically insignificant. Not to say that this won't grow. The stablecoin universe is going to grow. But I think the Genius Act, the point of passing that first, and I said 2 years ago, and we've been pounding the table, they got to pass stablecoin legislation. They have to do it. It has to be first. There's a lot of legislation they have to pass, but they got to get stable coins into the mainstream. It's the bridge from the current financial system, fiat currency, into cryptocurrency. So until that thing is straightened out, which I think it now is, right? It's through the Senate. They're going to argue about it for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it is in the House. And then it's going to get passed. And then we already see the banks have already priced it in. They're all running into cryptocurrency, offering cryptocurrency services. JP Morgan opening entire cryptocurrency division. So I think my point being, now that there's clarity on how to be a stable coin, part of the Genius Act is they need to be pegged to either the US dollar, I think it's maybe the US dollar, Bitcoin, and gold. It's a super short list. And in reality, it's going to be the US dollar, because you don't want to be pegged to gold. That's not really a stable coin. It's stable in relationship to gold, so if it maintains a 1-to-1 ratio, but gold just had one of its biggest run-ups of all time. I wouldn't want my stable coin pegged to that right now. I'm not sure where gold is going. I'd rather see it, it's the dollar, and let's go to I have this up somewhere. You'll see the DXY, right? This green line on this chart, until 2022, this green line was a 20-year high on the strength of the dollar index. Since 2022, we've been kind of crossing above and below and above and below. However, these last 2 days right here, that's a new 3+ year low. You got to go back to March of 2022, the last time the DXY was down at this point. And understand, this is still high. So people that are saying the sky is falling and the dollar is plummeting, if you take a look at this chart, I'll go to the 1 week so we can kind of hear. This is a 3-day. So, right, I mean, you've got, you know, you kind of got a line of support here, down at around 88. We're at 97 right now. This traded between 88 and 100, right? And so there's a lot of room. And even all of this, if you go a little further back, right, this takes you all the way back, by the way, to 2014. If you go a little further back, what so often happens, what was a ceiling became a floor. So 88 was actually ultra high, you know, for this period of time from 2003 until 2014. That's 11 years. So we're 20 years into still at a very exceptionally high level on strength of the dollar. We want this to get back down to reasonable numbers. As Bitcoin holders, and you know, the Bitcoin miners are derivatives of the Bitcoin, there's been a very good correlation. It's not one-to-one. There's certain times when Bitcoin does its thing and it runs no matter what the dollar's doing. But in general, as the DXY goes down, as the strength of the dollar goes down, Bitcoin goes up. There's a very high correlation there. So this recent move, I think, is front-running Bitcoin's move to new all-time highs. That's my opinion. Brett, that depends on how much you like your Rolexes.
Those things are junk. Did you hear about that big thing?
No.
That they found that China got all mad about the whole thing with the tariffs and came clean that they've been making the Rolex for the last, so many years.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was the same with all these high-end designer bags. Like what they would do is make them in China and ship them over to certain areas and put the tags on them.
I'm just reading the comments. Somebody calling me stupid. Got to get at least one of those per stream in here somewhere. Sarmelon Gaming.
I don't think, Tom, we'll ever buy a Lambo. We live in an area.
Yeah, that's the number one reason I wouldn't buy a Lamborghini, is because it doesn't even stand out here. There's a Lamborghini club here with like 400 members. And I live in this is a small town. So
I think what would stand out, maybe what is that thing called?
I'll tell you what still stands out for me as I drive the roads here and see, you just don't see this elsewhere. It's not normal. That this is a very strange place that I live. But still, a Rolls Royce still stands out. That'd be the one car I would say still kind of jumps out. We see McLarens left and right here. I mean, it's crazy. So this is La La Land. I don't live in reality.
Another, like when I was down there, I saw like 4 Rolls Royces, and one was it was called the Ghost.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying you don't see them. I'm just saying, to me, when I see that, it still stands out.
What I love is like when you see them at Walmart. That's the thing that gets me. Hey,
they got some good deals at Walmart.
Well, it's 6:07. I gotta sneak out.
All right. Well, I guess that's our time. To sum it up, I think it was a great week for the Bitcoin miners. Some of them up 30, 40% this week. It was a good week for Bitcoin. I hope everybody has a fantastic weekend. George, thanks for joining us. All of the members, special thanks.
I think we should do Thursday next week. I'll do it if you want to.
So let's do Thursday next week instead of Friday, because the market will be closed, and in the United States, it's a national holiday. So
do it.
All right.
Do it. Do it.
Do it. And thanks for all the likes. Thanks so much, everybody. Hope to see you guys all next Friday. And to the members, we will see you on Tuesday.